especially with all the other, no, oh God, what do you call them? Third party advertisers. There you go.
Yes. And Beulah Hillier, hello, says, hi from Alberta. Hello. Eddie Rodriguez says, no sound for me. Yes, I know. I fixed it. I just fixed it now. Apologies for that. Let's start again. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. And again, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. We pause the whole show for super chats. They really do help us out. And we have memberships.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let us know now if you can hear it. Okay, we're good now, says Eddie. So thank you for letting us know, Eddie. And yes, let's start with breaking news, I believe. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Connected properly. Let's start with this from Tanya Clemens that says, just a little Ralph story for you on this beautiful Alberta day. And let's hear what she
And we're going to get into the Western Standard debate. It was absolutely fantastic. I got a lot to say about it. But before we get into that news, I figured we'd start off with this.
Okay, so yesterday was a UCP event where they honored the legacy of Ralph Klein. And every time I meet someone who was good friends with Ralph or just was in his circles, I always feel so incredibly jealous that I didn't get to know him and I didn't get to be his friend. So I have that like sadness in my heart that I never really got to know this man. And I believe he was such a good man for Alberta. So I was talking to this one friend of mine the other day who was good friends with Ralph. And he told me the story that as he was telling it, he was tearing up. And obviously I'm a soft heart, so I was tearing up too. And I just wanted to share it. He was talking about how Ralph was going to go to Edmonton on this tour, like social meet and greet, doing things like that. And his plane was leaving from Calgary in the morning. So my friend met him at the airport in Calgary to go up for this day of meet and greets. And there was a lot of, drinks and celebrations involved in it. And by the end of the day, a long day of meet and greets, Ralph had had quite a few drinks and he was kind of coming off the high of those and was kind of getting into his sleepy time. And they were coming back on their plane and it was dark out and they were flying over Crossfield and these small little towns. And Ralph just kind of had his head against the window, looking out the window of the plane at all these lights he was flying over top of. And he just was looking out there and he said, man, I sure love this place. And that was it. That was the story. And
hopefully we can get some more people like Ralph Klein once we get our independence, because right now I do not like the politicians that are in power, whether that's Nenshi or even Danielle Smith seems to have her eyes more on Ottawa than she does on Alberta. She seems like she's selling out the future of Alberta in order to get one foot in Ottawa.
Yes, and we do continue, unfortunately, to see mostly just career politicians trying to take stabs at grasping power. When instead, we need people and engaged citizens that actually do want to make a change, not just for themselves, but also for their fellow citizenry, because they've lived through what it's like not to have that voice.
Yeah, I'm far more in favor of non-politicians. Just people that we can trust. That's what we need. Even if they make mistakes, as long as they're transparent and trustable, that's what we need in a new Alberta. It seems like Canada is filled with nothing but career politicians, and people that get into it want to be nothing more than career politicians.
Mm-hmm. Because they're just interested in mostly being the fame and the mostly power.
Well, I don't think
everything that comes with it.
I don't think there's any fame involved with it. I think it's the corruption. The Canadian system is nothing but corrupt. I think these politicians on a global basis don't want fame. They would actually prefer...
Well, power is what I meant.
I think they would prefer not to have fame and just to be quiet in the back so they can collect their money and get the endless amount of corruption that's just happening in Western governments these days. We need a new breed of politicians that aren't politicians.
Yes. Sorry. Coming back. Next, let's go to, as you were talking about, the debate. Oh, I made that too big. Donna Kennedy Glance says, there you have it, a civilized and lively debate about Alberta separation. I am grateful to moderate this debate. It's a super important, albeit emotional issue for Albertans. And this was from the Western Standard Independence debate.
Yeah, and I watched the entire thing. It was absolutely fantastic. And I can tell you, one of the things I love to do in my spare times is watching debates. Yeah. We haven't really had a chance to watch too many Alberta Alberta independence debates because nationalists just won't step up to the plate. We've seen one with Bruce Party, another one with Keith Wilson, and one with Derek here. Now, I was incredibly surprised. I didn't know much about Derek's opponent, but he was a constitutional scholar, I guess. And I know Derek from the Western Standard, so I was like, oh man, he might have a bit of a challenge. Derek is an absolute superstar after this debate. I thought he did even better than Keith Wilson, and that is saying a lot. We're going to show his opening statement that he gave there, but he hit this just the right accord where he knew the economic issues, hit him very hard, but then focused on the cultural and emotional issues and was able to really convey that, which a lot of people aren't able to do in debates. So absolutely fantastic on Derek. We need to get Derek in as many debates as we can because he is by far the best debater we have in Alberta independence. I would love to see him up against Jason Kenney because we've seen now Bruce Party go against Jason Kenney, Keith Wilson go against Jason Kenney. I would love to see Derek against him because then you have a really an even evaluation of all the debaters kind of there because they would have the same opponent. I don't know if it was because his opponent was weak or Derek was just that good, but I will tell you, his opening and closing statements hit some real emotional heartstrings, which none of the other debaters were really able to do.
But I think he also did a great job by not mincing words. And I think a lot of the people, and rightfully so, because you want to attract as many people as you can into Alberta independence and to vote for either a change within Ottawa or for the second actual referendum question. But a lot of people do try to be very careful about how they frame certain issues and certain topics. And I think Derek did really good in not mincing words and giving that other side of the coin in saying, no, this is actually what it's about. This is what I actually believe. And this is why. Instead of saying, well, but there's other people that think, no, this is what we're doing. This is what's wrong. And this is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah, he walked this magical line of appealing to, I think, the soft middle, but he had this edge on him too. He would, put these real zingers in there here and there. And man, he really got under his opponent's skin at times. The moderator was a nationalist as well. She did a fantastic job. The only problem I had with the entire debate, the microphone levels were all off. All the main, commentator?
The moderator.
Yeah, the main moderator, her mic was really, really loud. Derek's was actually perfect. And the opponent was standing too far away from the mic. So it really hurt the debate overall. But it was probably one of the best debates, especially for Alberta independence at this point.
Yes. And again, some people might disagree with that. Some people, it might not be their style of debating or of responding to questions. But I think, especially as we've been saying for a while now, for a younger crowd, I think that is the type of a lot of people are looking for that I think has been a little missing within Alberta independence.
I'm not going to try to play moderate or walk some lines. I've seen a lot of other people kind of talking about this debate saying, oh, they're biased. They don't know. They can't really weigh in on who won. I can weigh on who won. I probably watch 3 or 4 hours of debates a day. Yes. When my side loses, I know when they lose and I know when they win. Derek did a freaking magnificent job and we need to get him another debate as soon as possible.
Yes. But now let's actually watch his, let's actually watch his introduction while we wait for the guy.
Okay.
There we go. Because I was trying to fix, for some reason I did all the resizing wrong today because we moved from the other studio to the original one we used to have, but let's watch.
Oh, and one thing about that, I think we're going to start rotating studios and trying to put some variety in the shows with some different sections in this studio compared to the other ones. So
I fight for independence not because I dislike Canada. On the contrary, I love Canada. I grew up in small Army and Air Force towns across Canada and had dreams of being a captain in the Royal Canadian Navy. But our Canada is gone. It has been replaced by a post-national economic redistribution zone. That Canada is terminally ill, and it shows no signs that it is willing to save itself. That Canada is crippled with shame and guilt, and only arouses itself to fly the maple leaf when the bad orange man says mean things. That Canada tore down its monuments to Sir John A. Macdonald and Queen Victoria. That Canada spits on the heroes that conquered and settled a harsh and hostile wilderness and made it one of the greatest and freest nations on earth. That Canada lowered its flag in self-flagellating shame for months to atone for a genocide that it well knew was a hoax. That Canada rejected its liberty for censorship and the false illusion of safety. That Canada opened the floodgates to third world mass migration that is destroying the inheritance passed on to us by our ancestors. That Canada tells you that you're racist if you oppose it. That Canada puts tampons in the men's room of a military base that used to be the home of one of the most feared armies in the world. That Canada used emergency war powers to violently and unconstitutionally crush a peaceful protest of flag-waving Canadians that were sick of having their freedoms crushed on the altar of COVID hysteria. That Canada was ashamed of the Canadian flag until we raised Alberta's blue shield in defiance. Alberta, and perhaps Saskatchewan, is the last bastion of real Canadian patriots. Patriots proud of our past and unwilling to surrender our future. We are trying to save a part of Canada by declaring that our portion of it is proud of its inheritance and is willing to fight to hand it to our posterity stronger than we found it.
Absolutely fantastic. And I see him on the Western Standard, and he's good on the Western Standard. He's a lot better than I am as a content creator. That being said, I didn't know he was going to be absolutely great at debating. I mean, a lot of the skills I guess he gets from content creation, he's bringing into the debate. The way he's able to write the speech and then read it with a certain emotional vigor was absolutely fantastic.
Well, he also said there that he was a captain. And I think he was a politician before too, so maybe that's where he gets it.
Well, I don't know his entire background. I mainly know him from the Western Standard, but what I'm saying is we need to get this guy in some more debates as soon as possible.
I'm sure he'd want to.
Keith Wilson is a good debater, but he's got a lot on his plate right now. And Derek, I would say, is either equal or even better than Keith when it comes to debates.
But next, RMC86 says, quote, Alberta separation organizations are fundraising 10 times more than the Stay in Canada group. Then no one will invest in Alberta with separation on the agenda myth was shattered yesterday with Meta's $13 billion AI data center announcement.
Yeah, and we're doing very good at fundraising, and we haven't even really started yet. On the 18th, which is coming up really soon, we have a telethon that's going to go out on, I think, 10 different Alberta Independence content creators channels. So it should be a big day to really raise some money for Keith Wilson's organization, Jason Levine's organization, and the Big Six, which are the main 6 organizations in Alberta Independence.
The Choose Alberta lawn and highway signs have been appearing all over rural Alberta as third-party advertiser Corey Morgan spends the tens of thousands of dollars his group has raised.
We started just at the end of May, right at the beginning of June. Honestly, I really only expected to raise a few $1,000s and make a few hundred signs. Since then, we're over $100,000 and have put out, we got 12,000 signs have been made.
According to numbers posted by Elections Alberta, most of the over $400,000 raised so far by third-party advertisers is for groups supporting separation. As of July 2nd, Let Alberta Decide has raised over $200,000. Pathway to Independence over $82,000. That's compared to the leading Federalist group, Alberta's Voice, with just $26,000 raised so far.
We're up against that. We're up against the 2 highest fundraising organizations are both separatists, and they're outraising my organization more than 10 to 1.
Elections Alberta requires all third-party advertisers submit contribution reports weekly, and only Alberta residents are allowed to donate up to.
I don't actually know if that's the biggest one. Wasn't what's it called, Forever Canada?
No,
that the biggest
you
one?
don't know. Like we've been talking about this on the show. Forever Canada has been reporting 0 donations. We're going to continue with that clip. It's absolutely fantastic. Keith Wilson's going to be at the end of that thing.
A maximum of $5,000 each.
These are not large donations. These are smaller donations from over 1,000 Albertans. And it says to me that the level of discontent with Alberta's treatment within Confederation is strong.
But then it seems like they're fudging even with obviously mainstream media and the propaganda arm of the federal government fudging numbers and going along with that as well.
What do you mean fudgy numbers?
Well, by saying that Alberta's Voice is the biggest third-party advertiser.
It is the big
formally, yes, but I believe there's way more signs from Forever Canada than from.
Yeah, but for as much they're talking about money raised. Forever Canada supposedly has 0 money raised, and the reason they're saying they don't have to actually claim how much money they're raising right now. And this is a huge scandal. Derek from The Fringe made a video on this and gave out contact information. We should be contacting Elections Canada and raising a fuss about this.
Elections Alberta.
Elections Alberta.
Yes. Next, again, I did these all wrong, sorry. Berta Proud Dad says, I am for pipelines, I am for Alberta jobs. These are non-negotiable. But if Canada was truly, quote-unquote, open for business, taxpayers wouldn't need to back the pipeline with $43 billion while the country sits sits $1.3 trillion in debt and races toward $3 trillion. Real investment comes from private business, not another automobile handed to Canadians.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with investment. This is Mark Carney literally marching Canada towards communism, using regulations to keep private industry out. So the only investor will be the Canadian government in the end. He's also giving out major loans to all the big industries that have no way to really pay it back if this USMCA continues year over year or even gets canceled. What he'll probably do is offer a secondary loan for percentages of these businesses. And that's how you usher in communism into a capitalist society.
And again, they haven't fully said if it's going to be, like they say, oh yes, it might be funded by investment too, but they've mainly just said that they're the ones that are going to be the principal investors on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
From all the announcements they've made.
Well, it's obvious what's happening at this point. It's not about being the principal investor. It's about, number one, using regulation to push private dollars out, to push other governments away as well. The Saudi Arabian government was wanting to invest a ton of money into natural resource projects. We'll talk about that later. With all these regulations, nobody's seeing how these things are going to be profitable, except for the Canadian government, who will continue to pay an oversized climate tax to themselves, so they don't mind if the pipeline's not profitable, because in the end, they don't want to share profits with the provinces. They want to keep everything for the federal government. The best way to do that is to operate a pipeline at a loss and then pay the carbon taxes off of the top and collect those carbon taxes directly to the federal government.
But what's funny is that probably governments like Saudi Arabia and now I'm guessing Venezuela, with U.S. involvement, and the U.S. itself, do see this as profitable for themselves, as in, oh, we're not going to be competing with Canada because they're going the retarded way. They're going to do this the retarded way. We're actually going to be doing it at regular, proper market value cost. So it's better for them.
Well, it depends how many nations are able to actually pull off this transition into communism. Canada's going to most likely be one of them because they have enough natural resources to actually finance this thing. We see a lot of other Western nations wanting to go that direction, but they don't know how to finance it. Now, we do see Canada and the EU coming closer together. So is the EU and the UK's idea that Canada is going to finance the entire transition for Western civilization here? We need to very much hope that J.D. Vance gets in the United States to keep pushing back against that.
Sorry. But now let's go to your comments and then we'll head into Alberta Stay Free. Todd says, was trying to pay attention to Mitch while your show was playing on the phone. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Pete says, Derek was so right on. I was pleasantly surprised.
I was very surprised too. Man, I didn't think anybody was going to be better than Keith Wilson. I was always like, oh, let's put Keith up. And I know he's got a lot on his plate. But now that we got a heavy hitter like Derek from the Western Standard that can do debates, we need to get him as many debates as possible.
Chris Calgary says, we need a Ralph. Lyle Norman says, Diane lost the debate at the end with the fear-mongering. I didn't get to that bit.
They lost it all the way through the thing. And I was surprised because I didn't know anything about him other than he was a constitutional scholar. As far as constitutional scholars go, I mean, Bruce Pardy is one. There's a few other in Canada. They typically do really well in debates like this. He absolutely shit the bed. I was glad he stepped up because Federalists typically aren't stepping up, but he definitely lost his cool a few times as well. But even if he didn't lose his cool or go negative at the end, Derek just shines so hard that it was his right from the beginning, almost right from that opening statement.
Lyle Norman also says Dr. Dennis Mildry was best friends with Mr. Klein. Chris Calgary says, unfortunately, Canadian politics is a cesspool of corruption, a bunch of self-absorbed hypocrites who just want to get ahead. And unfortunately, most of the population don't want to actually see the truth and see this and see that this is actually what's happening. We have a story later about something that's happening in Mexico and how the citizenry is essentially saying, no, we're not going to go along with your stupid plan. And that is because we have a very healthy, sometimes a little bit unhealthy, but a very healthy, we're skeptical of our own governments and we know how corrupt it is. In Canada, I think people haven't fully realized or want to realize it's a cognitive dissonance between what your government is actually doing versus what people are seeing.
Well, people in Canada just don't think they can resist. They just go along to get along and they're being ushered into communism without even putting up a fight. And if we look at Mexico, and we're going to talk about this story later, they try to usher in a digital ID. They were supposed to be one of the first nations to adopt the digital ID, digital currency, and things like this. 80% of people are non-compliant, so the government ended up having to back down. Mm-hmm. If we look at the Jibby Jab era, you had almost 90% compliance in Canada, and that's far more invasive because that's bodily autonomy at that point.
Yes, Pete says, I loved when Derek said a term in German that essentially describes a person as having a punchable face when he was talking about Trudeau.
Well, I was glad he really had that hard edge on him because Alberta independence seems to not have that hard edge lately. And Derek really had that. And he had quite a few one-liners where he was really trying to get under the skin. He was saying, you know, I can't appeal to moderates, but this is my stance and I'm not backing down from it. But when he was asked, is there anything that could change your mind? Yeah. And he said, yeah, my mind could be changed if the Canadian government did this, and this. So that shows a willingness, and he's not just set in his ways as well.
Mm-hmm. Now Norman says, Dwayne is a political analyst. Worse yet, he's an analyst for CTV. Yep.
Well, I will say I do have one criticism about Derek, and only one really, and it's just a difference of opinion. But he actually presented his side fairly well, even though I totally disagree with it. He said he would go with the Westminster system, but he also pitched the other systems as well. And maybe he sold that because he understands it's going to be easier for that soft middle if they think we're going to keep the same system and there's going to be a lot less transition. That being said, I am not a fan of the Westminster system. I do not want independence just to end up in the same mess a decade down the line.
Mm-hmm. Lyle Norman says the Royal Canadian military personnel don't have to wear military clothes. That is not something to be proud of. There's a lot of things not to be proud of with the Canadian Armed Forces right now.
We'll see in these Jason Kenney's debates and this debate, very often the nationalists just don't understand Alberta or just don't understand the culture of Alberta. And they'll say things that are just complete positives in my eyes and in a lot of other people's eyes in Alberta. And it's almost like they're making the case for us. Mm-hmm. And I will say one other thing. Derek addressed every single point his opposition brought up. And then on top of that, was able to make his argument.
But I will also say the other side, or whenever they're making arguments as well, again, it's the same issue I continue to have. It seems like they live, and a lot of them, I mean, not anything against boomers, but a lot of them being boomers seem to still be living 30 years ago because they only live in their little bubbles. That guy that was yelling yesterday on Todd's video, Todd, we played your video yesterday on RUMBLE because of the swearing, but if anybody hasn't seen it, you can go see it. It's the first thing we played over there once we moved to Rumble, RUMBLE. It seems like they're in this bubble and they can't get out of it, and they don't go to the cities. They don't really know what the young people are saying. They don't really know the struggles that a lot of people go through. And it's almost impossible to try to make them understand because, once again, it's that cognitive dissonance where, if it's good for me, I don't want to know how it is for anybody else. And I have seen it, and maybe it is a cultural, more Canadian thing, maybe more Eastern thing, but where families do get extremely divided, either by moving away from where they're originally from, but they don't interact with the young people in their lives anymore as much either. And they kind of want to keep it all to themselves.
I was going to say something. I forgot it. You kept going on, and then I was like, I'm forgetting it. And then I forgot it.
You told me to talk more.
Yeah,
That's what
you definitely need to talk more.
Chris Calgary says, yes, Andrew Wilson is the slayer in debates against the woke mindset. And I do really like Keith Wilson, but again, I think he's a little bit too mild-mannered sometimes for certain things.
Keith Wilson,
we do need somebody.
Keith Wilson is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Especially, he has a debate style where he knows he's going after that middle ground. Derek, I much prefer Derek's style where he goes after that middle ground, but he firmly stakes just a hard edge to a lot of the points that he makes, which I absolutely loved. Mm-hmm. And I think it appeals much more to clippable moments within a debate as well. And that's how a lot of these U.S. debaters were able to go viral and really get their points across was with those clippable moments. And Derek had those clippable moments.
Philivespa Hello says, an Alberta constitution needs to have term limits on any public bureaucrat and must create elections for judges, police chiefs, etc. Which is why, again, we really do like the proposition from Bruce Party, and we interviewed him on the certain topics where we thought maybe he hadn't delved in deep enough yet.
Yeah, I'll say Bruce Party's constitutional proposal by far is the most risky because we know nothing about it. Meaning we know theoretically it could work, but we've never seen something like that in action. It offers absolutely the most freedom, but we don't know the holes in the system. I try to push back a little bit, and it seems to be well thought out. If I had a vote, I would be voting for Bruce Party's system. That being said, a lot of other Albertans are going to want to take a much safer path, which with a originalist U.S. style constitution, or maybe even the Westminster system. The Westminster system, even though I don't like it, has to be probably most favored because all the nationalists are going to vote for that system just to spite the independent side. Plus, a lot of people on independence side may vote for it as well, which gives them a heavy advantage.
And I think Bruce does bring up a very important point that I think even a lot of yourselves and a lot of people have to stop and think about, which is, do I actually value the level of freedom that I'm thinking about, the responsibility that comes with it, and the actual consequences that come with that level of freedom? Because that is why a lot of people might choose to go with a more known constitution like the US one, or even worse, the Westminster system one. Because once you actually sit down and think about, well, but who's going to be in charge of X, Y, and Z? Who's going to be in charge of the police? Who's going to be in charge of the hospitals? That level of freedom gets a little bit uncomfortable because a lot of people have been used to, for all their lives, to live under a system that does take care of that. And that is the thing you have to weigh as we go into the constitutional conventions. And
not even that level of freedom. The thing is, the amount of wealth that's going to come with it, you're going to lose a lot of wealth redistribution into infrastructure from natural resources, from major corporations, if we go with the maximum freedom route. That's why I think a lot of people will want to either go with the Westminster system, again, which I'm against, or if you stop correcting me there.
Well, because they correct me.
Well, I know, but it makes me lose my train of thought. We can continue on there.
Stephen Jensen, actually, thank you for pausing. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Says, best quote of the week: if politics changed anything, it would be made illegal. Exactly. Says, amazing how Federalists think that Alberta can't figure things out without Daddy Ottawa. And it goes exactly to the point that I was saying. Again, people are used to that always being the same system, so they'll just go along to get along. And because it's scary to think, or have to think, oh, well, what if I lose all the things that I'm already used to, and I have to start thinking of how to come up with a different system and live within that different system too. Okay. A few more comments and then we'll get into Alberta Stay Free since you lost your train of thought. Pete says, well, they still got to know about politics, so they better be a heck of a scholar. Yeah. And Ken Panjali, thank you, says Derek was a politician. So,
so that makes sense.
It comes from
there.
there.
I mean, he was well polished and just able to deliver that emotional rhetoric as well as the logic. And I mean, it was just absolutely phenomenal the way he did that.
And Beulah Hillier says, I also watched the debate and Derek did a great job. Yeah. And William Robel also says that opening statement by Derek Hildebrandt was a nuke. And I'd love to try to get him for an interview as well once we bring up interviews again. Pete says, let's bring back Crowder. He would never. No, he would never. And I think it's kind of the same argument for us. Like, I would never go back.
I don't know. I could see Crowder coming up to Alberta.
Yes.
As to promote the vote and things like that. So I don't think it's completely out of the question. And it would raise a lot of eyebrows on the Federalist side as well. It would get a ton of media exposure. And it would be hard for them to declare foreign interference because Crowder is originally from Canada. Same thing with Tom MacDonald. If we could get him up there. They're American patriots because that's where they live now. But they're originally from Canada. And both could be used, I think, very interestingly, closer to the vote.
And again, I think they would be interested because Crowder has been talking about Alberta already.
Yeah.
So Harmony, hello Harmony, says, hello Nan and the guy. I attended the debate last night between Derek and Dwayne. Derek was outstanding. Oh, that's so cool that you got to actually be there.
Yeah.
But now let's actually go to Alberta Stay Free. Well, they work on here, but they take a bit longer. Let's start with Keith Wilson saying, again, quote, young Albertans are asking whether they will ever own a home, afford groceries, or start a family, or build a future here. Ottawa's answer is more debt and more costly conditions. This is not good enough. Alberta can do better than staying trapped in this system. Vote option 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the young people, if they want a future, they need to vote for Alberta independence. I mean, this is kind of, I think it's coming back to me what I was going to say about the other debater there. And it was, they were really trying to use fear and that it's going to be too hard. It's too hard to stay within Canada because your future is absolutely going to be crushed if you do nothing. And if you don't go out and vote, we need to vote for Alberta independence, whether you're voting for yourself, your grandchildren, or your own future.
Mm-hmm. And again, go to letalbertadecide.com. That is Keith Wilson's TPA, third-party advertiser. But I think this can be hammered home. And young people, I think deep down also know, because why else would they be telling Ali Continental when he went into universities that they would take a job in the US if they were offered one tomorrow, but they didn't want Alberta to be independent, which is, I think, it's a very small bridge we have to cross to actually get young people to see the benefits of not staying within Canada, and that a lot of the issues that are coming from bad policies that have been instituted even before they were born, and that they've been living under and getting used to for far too long.
I don't think the big two issues are the actual non-binding referendum and the binding referendum. The big issue that I think will actually determine whether we're successful in Alberta independence happens after the first non-binding referendum. And that is the leadership review on Danielle Smith and getting her replaced with somebody that can win an election within Alberta, like a Keith Wilson or somebody else. If we do not get her out and we don't realize the threat of Danielle Smith, that she is going to elongate the amount of time until we get to that binding referendum, the amount of time it takes to get to that binding referendum will determine a lot of things as well.
Mm-hmm. And then again, because Concerned Canadian says, quote, who agrees with this assessment? Canada is in the middle of a socialist takeover heading to communism. I wouldn't say takeover. I would say Canada has been designed with socialism in mind for at least the last 40, 50 years. Like that has been the system put in place, and that has been working, and that people have gotten used to up to now.
I don't think it's been there for 40 or 50 years. They're definitely directing it. And we see this happening in the States under Biden as well. The thing is,
but you can't tell me the Canadian healthcare system isn't socialist.
I'm not saying it's not socialist, but what I'm saying is it worked fairly well by design for a little while. But now they're building mechanisms that are really pure communism and pushing out foreign private investment and other things like that. I think it's very easy to actually turn that system and direct that system to where they want to go right now. And that's exactly what we're seeing under a Mark Carney majority government.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, again, things like the way public education was done, public healthcare, etc., has been done. It's been a soft sell on socialism and how it does work. And even with the narrative that Canadians have been telling themselves, mainly through civics education, which now it doesn't even exist, but also the education system and the propagandist machine that is the mainstream media, that, for example, one of the things to be the proudest of in Canada is that we have free healthcare, that we're better than the US because of that. That is the soft sell of socialism that has been dragging on for a very long time.
Yeah, but you have to realize...
And that is permitting this to actually be instituted.
You have to realize how a democracy actually works. And you see this come up in Christian nationalist debates and things like that, saying it's a democracy, we can vote any system that we want in, and that's the flaw of the system itself, because you can technically vote in socialism and communism if you can win the hearts and minds of the people through indoctrination. And it looks like the indoctrination game of the Canadian government through the mainstream media has been going very strong, because the more Mark Carney destroys the country, the more his polling seems to go up. It's absolutely ridiculous. The people seem to be voting communism in, if anything else.
Mm-hmm. And there's a famous phrase that I always misquote of, you can vote yourself into communism, but you have to bleed your way out.
Yeah,
something like that.
That's exactly true.
Or fight your way out, or bullet your way. I don't know which way it is, but it's going to be really hard to get out, essentially. But lastly, and I just realized that I did all the segments wrong. So the first segment was Alberta Stay Free, not breaking news. Then the second one was Alberta
Let's keep
Politics,
going.
and now Alberta...
It's
I don't even know where I am.
Let's just
it's
keep
Friday. We should be relaxed. So be relaxed. Ryan Curtison says Carney gets asked what he has heard from Saudi investors about what they want to invest in Canada. Judging by his answer, it's quite clearly nothing. Why can't he be honest? Instead, we have to listen to him and we always do, his way through a made-up response.
The Saudi investors want the same that any investor wants when they look at Canada, and that is what the West has: natural resources. Canada, the Canadian government is blocking those kind of investments through regulations because they don't want to, number one, give the West more power, and they want to be the only investor. The United States also wants what the West has. Mark Carney is making sure to box all these potential investors out through regulation.
Thanks.
Next question, Kristen.
Hi, that's myself from Bloomberg. Based on your discussions today, what Canadian sectors and assets would you envision Saudi investors and businesses investing in, and what did they particularly express interests in?
There's a broad range, and I would say that these interests go in both directions. But certainly in energy, there's interest in energy, and that's the full range in terms of commercial partnerships from LNG through to renewable and the nuclear end of the spectrum. The mining, there's a strong interest in mining. That's more inbound here, given the ambitions that are there. Conventional infrastructure more broadly is there as well. And look, this is not you see it in some of the agreements today. Niagara University, as an example, Niagara College, there is great interest in building those educational ties. Final elements of AI. There's very ambitious building the AI stack here, but when you move up into the agentic layer and beyond, there's very strong interest.
And it's almost all natural resources that they're interested in, and that's all. And Mark Carney doesn't want that. And the interesting thing is he only got $1 billion of investment from the Saudis, which is actually very little in the grand scheme of things, especially when you look at how much a pipeline cost or a natural resource project. Why? Even the Saudis know they're not going to put a massive investment when it's going to be a minimal return, if any return, on their investments, because the projects that are being approved are not going to deep water ports. They're going to shallow water ports, and it's going to be impossible to export enough oil off the back of that pipeline.
It's interesting also, he mentioned education there and bridging the gap or connecting with educational platform was just, at this point, one of the few things that Canada does have that some people might be interested in, but it also has just become an indoctrination center. And ways to export this kind of ideology elsewhere, particularly to the US.
We talk about this a lot, and we talk about when he goes to these countries to cut these deals, he always puts up education, but what is in the subcontext of them investing in education is that their citizens are going to be able to be approved for mass immigration. And that's the sneaky way that he wants to sneak in a lot of people into the country. If you invest in our education system, we're going to offer massive amounts of visas and permanent residence to your citizens. He did the same thing with India.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we can go back to comments and then to Alberta Personalities, because I messed up all the sections. Apologies, it's Friday. Happy Friday, by the way. I never say it, so happy Friday to all of you. I hope you're having a great day. Also, let me know if there's still sun or if it's actually raining again or what the weather is like, especially with the stampede going on. Todd says, they couldn't find it on Rumble. Think they took it down. Your video from yesterday is just the same one as YouTube for me. Yes, but the last 10 minutes, I believe, or 15 minutes on that video on Rumble, it looks the same as the one on YouTube. After, there's a break screen that says going to Rumble. After that, if the video continues on Rumble, but it doesn't on YouTube. So if you scroll all the way to that segment, it must be like at an hour 50, and you find wherever it says going to Rumble, then the video resumes after that, and you can see the first thing we talked about was your video.
What she's trying to say is it's the exact. What she's trying to say is
it was clear.
What she's trying to say, it's the exact same. What she's trying to say is it's the exact same show with an extra 10 minutes added on.
But the way to find it is you have to go to where that 30-second wait screen is and then wait for it to end or scroll past it, and then it starts. Todd says, seen it for a second while in Red Deer, then could never get back to it. Sometimes if you try to get to it like an hour after it ends, it's rendering and it's kind of doing its whole Rumble process, so it might take a while for it to actually show up again before you can play it on Rumble.
Yeah, RUMBLE has a lot of issues with its UI and things like that. A lot of times the sound won't work, or it will cut off halfway through. Sometimes we go to Rumble or RUMBLE, but then we just have to stop because something has gone wrong there. And it's a shame because I prefer a free speech platform like RUMBLE, but they just don't have their things together quite yet.
Yeah. Chris Calgary says, Keith is a consummate gentleman, brilliant moral man. I like a little edge, which Derek has. I think we need both. And it's the same argument we used to see, I continue to say, with Jeff Rath and Keith Wilson. It's great to have both because they complement each other.
Yeah, and in a decentralized movement like this, you can have all of them. And that's what really throws our opponents or the Federalists off. They don't know how to attack. Are they going to attack the soft middle? Because that's going to leave openings for the wings and things like that.
Sanjali says, hello, Nat and Guy. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for being here. Pete says, Albertans are angry and they have every right to be. Derek has made that point perfectly. And I think that is also something that has to be shown.
Yeah.
Todd says, yesterday, RumbleVid has regular thumbnail for me as well, just as a YouTube video plays for me. Again, it is the same. I'll figure it out. Sanjali says, I have been giving out Cory Morgan signs and people are stealing them or pulling them out. And we can have probably the usual suspects. I'm pretty sure it's not people that want to go put them in their own yards.
Well, and we've seen that Cory Morgan is talking about buying trail cams and trying to catch these people. There needs to be prosecutions on this, and we need to give public examples so people stop doing this. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's private property. Pete, which Canada doesn't seem to believe as much in, so we'll see. Pete says, if Alberta can break free, the Western First Nations people will give Ottawa the finger and choose prosperity. They'll see. Yeah, especially not the chiefs that do benefit from the federal government, but everybody else that has to live under them and also wants independence from their own system.
Yeah.
Pete says, finally summer. Good. Not here. Here, it's pouring down rain.
Well, and I've never really figured this out because the amount of billions of dollars per tribe they're getting is ridiculous. I mean, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars with this mass grave hoax, as well as a lot of other handouts. If the chiefs would have just given 1 or 2% of that out to the people, they would have fell in line with the leadership of the First Nations, but they didn't even give that out.
Pete says, and if you watch US politics, you know more about what's coming. God. I'm sure you can hear that one. Pete also says,
there was some thunder if you couldn't hear it.
Pete says liberals are salivating at socialist cities like New York City. And again, it helps them bridge that excuse, especially if the US, for some retarded reason, doesn't go for a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio.
Yeah, and we should piggyback off of a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the money that's going to be invested. We're talking about billions of dollars for midterm elections as well as the 2028 elections. And we see exactly how that is shaping up. It's shaping up communism versus capitalism.
Hold on, where are we? Pete Griswold says, we need an Andrew Wilson. Well, you know more about that. He's more of a fan. I don't really like him that much.
I like Andrew Wilson a lot, and he is one of the best blood sport debaters out there. But I'll tell you what, Derek from the Western Standard definitely has streaks of that.
I do like Derek. I don't like Keith. Ken Pengelly.
You don't like Keith?
No, not Keith. What is his name? Andrew Wilson. Keith Wilson, Andrew Wilson. My brain didn't work.
She says she doesn't like Andrew Wilson, but every time I watch something with Andrew Wilson, she ends up taking his side and agreeing with him.
Well, yeah, because I'm not going to agree with an insane person that he's debating.
No, he'll debate a lot of conservatives as well.
Okay. I've never seen those.
You have?
No, I haven't.
I've watched them and we've talked about it.
Okay. Ken Pengelly said, you're feisty today. Ken Pengelly says,
I was thinking the same thing about you.
Feistier than you. Ken Pengelly says, Derek was Wild Rose and then UCP for a short time. He and Brian Jean, I'm guessing, became leaders after Danielle crossed the floor.
Oh, fantastic.
So thank you for the background. Cindy Melnick says, Derek from Western Standard put out another call for Tommy to come and debate him. And was that call answered? No.
Yeah, I think he's way, after watching him debate last night, way above Tommy Lukazik. Tommy's not going to go debate him. We need to get him Jason Kinney, if anything.
Harmony says, I've called Elections Alberta 3 times. They suggest I write to them. I will do that as well.
Fantastic.
Great. Unfortunately, anytime somebody suggests you write to them, it's usually because they know that goes to spam. So that seems like they don't really want to talk about or fix the issue from the root, and it seems like they're scared.
I would disagree because they did fix there was a couple previous issues with Alberta independence, and we kept writing, we kept calling, and then there was a change made. It just took some time. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with that change, and I thought there was a lot of dirty things about that as well. It seemed like they backdated Forever Canada, saying they were already registered. I'm willing to bet they're going to try to backdate their donations as well.
Jim Roy, hello, says the East-West pipelines will be used against independence. When we get a majority in October, they will stop these pipelines. And you seem to disagree with the usefulness of the pipelines announced. Like there is an actual real plan for those pipelines. It's just not what a lot of people think it will be.
Yeah, you just have to look at the Canadian economy as well as other Western economies that are moving away from traditional Western values. How are they going to fund this utopia or their communist dreams or even this censorship regime? How are they going to fund all of this? And there is no way to fund it. Canada has the way through its natural resources, and Carney is actually building half a dozen mechanisms at this point. He's probably got a dozen more coming to make sure he's the one controlling the profits that are going to come out of these natural resource projects. And I'm almost sure this is how they're going to try to fund it. So I'm looking at a much more long-term vision. And I think he's trying to slow walk the Liberals towards natural resource development, federalization, natural resource development, not your traditional, let's split it between the provinces and federal government.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, these pipelines will eventually be funding the communist wet dream that Carney and everybody else has that gives them more and more power. Because usually under a communist regime or a socialist regime, people run out of other people's money. This way would be mostly a never-ending tap. However, anything ever controlled by the government never fully works, as we saw with Venezuela, because this was the exact same plan Venezuela had.
Because how are you going to actually pull off communism in a country like Canada? And I had thought about this for a long time. It's obviously going to be done on the back of the UBI, as well as a bunch of other mechanisms. But I think it's all going to hinge on the UBI and collapsing the economy to a certain point. If the federal government collapses the economy, it's not going to have money to give out a UBI unless it develops these natural resource projects and puts the money into their coffers and then distributes it to the people. And the people will vote for it because they want the UBI.
Yes. Philip Espahelo says,
UBI is universal basic income, by the way, if you don't know.
Philip Espa says, I would like to see a proportional representation voting system be used regardless of what legislative body is chosen. Can you imagine the outrage from the lefties if we implement that system first?
Now, well, proportional representation, is that kind of like ranked choice voting?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of ranked choice voting. I just think it's, especially with a lot of the way elections are going in the United States, I think it's easier to rig elections and things like that because it's really hard to start doing the math.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was trying to fix something. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, where are we? Pete says, nah, lawyers are as bad as bankers. Not sure what he was responding to. And Salatis Maximus, hello, says, politics is so complex, you pretty much have to be a lawyer to do the job. Oh, that's the one. And William Rebel says, Crowder was born in the USA, but grew up outside of Montreal.
Oh, I didn't know he was born in the US.
I think one of his parents is Canadian. Salty says, good to see you are posting more on X, a great way to get your message out.
Yeah, and I kind of use X as a complimentary to the show. So all the stories we're going to cover on the show, I post before the show on X throughout the day. I may change that a little bit coming up because I'm going to start shooting little shorts for all the articles, hopefully, or at least a few of the articles daily. So that may change when I'm actually able to post different news articles because I might have to shoot the night before and then post for the next day.
Krisher says, I find it amazing how the East always says we're nothing but a bunch of hicks in Saskatchewan and Alberta, but one thing they cover the most is a healthcare system, which was invented and developed in Saskatchewan. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on last night's debate, they kept saying, oh, it's going to be so hard to do this. It's going to be so hard to do that. If the freaking Canadian federal government can do it, Alberta are the hardest working people within Canada and is the most self-sustaining province within Canada. I don't think we're going to have a problem doing it. I think Canada is going to have a problem doing it without Alberta.
And lastly, Pete Griswold says, like Justin Trudeau hopping up and down in a Katy Perry video, he has been reduced to that. I'm kind of glad about it. But also, I don't think he should be absolved from everything he put everybody through and the system and the mechanism he put in place for the past 10, 15 years, which we're now going to be seeing the expansion of with Carney.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But let's go to Alberta Personalities now.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with Drea Humphrey showing us activist David Eby saying, where was all this passion for freedom during COVID tyranny while he served as our Attorney General? I guess the quote-unquote stolen land banner is what hyped him here.
Yeah, this is absolutely crazy that he's complaining about this in the way that he is about the Olympics, because the jibby jab era could be put onto this exactly for what the different things that he's saying.
Thanks so much for coming out today. It's so heartening to come from Vancouver and see so many people concerned about Olympic issues. Right now, the question that we're all asking ourselves in Vancouver is if these are the things that are happening for a 2-week sporting event, then what would happen in an actual situation where there was some kind of security threat? What kind of repression would we be facing if this wasn't just a sporting event, if it was something more serious? Let me tell you what we're seeing in Vancouver. Activists who go to City Hall to speak out against Olympic initiatives are being visited at their home by security forces, members of the RCMP intelligence team. Cowichan knitters who are concerned about their sweater designs being stolen by the Hudson's Bay Company for Olympic souvenirs and said that they were going to stand in their sweaters along the torch run in protest were visited by the RCMP asking what their intentions were because they were viewed as a security threat. Any kind of opposition to the Olympic Games, speaking out against the Olympics, makes you a security threat now in Vancouver and will get you a visit from the police. There are countries where it would be normal, where if you spoke out against the agenda of the government, you would be visited by the police and we would understand that. It didn't used to be that way.
That's what Canada is now, and he is a security threat to private property in Canada. He is the one ushering it in.
Canada. It didn't used to be that way in Vancouver. But every day we're seeing that people who are just saying, why are we spending $6 billion on the Olympics when people are freezing to death in the streets of Vancouver? Why are we spending $6 billion on the Olympics when we have the highest child poverty rate in Canada, in British Columbia? And why is it that we're holding these games on unceded native lands? We can't resolve these land claims, but we can spend $6 billion on the Olympics. And those are all important questions to ask. But if you want to put them on a sign and put them in the window of your house, there's a new law that the province has passed that allows the police to enter your house to remove the sign as an illegal sign. Not only that, if you're homeless on the streets of Vancouver just weeks before the Olympics, a new law that allows the police to use force to remove the homeless from the streets and force them into a shelter. And not even the nearest shelter, any shelter in the province. So these are the things that we're seeing happening in the lead up to the Olympic Games. And these are why we're saying, you know, if you want to slide down the hill the fastest, then that's okay. You know, knock yourself out. But please don't bankrupt the province. Please leave the homeless alone.
Okay, and he's okay with all these policies.
No,
He's just trying to campaign on the back of this because when it was the jibby jab era, it was even worse policies than that. And they didn't have the mechanisms built back then, yet they were still doing a lot of these things.
Oh, and I mean, if the signs had anything to do with hate speech or what they define as hate speech, it'd be completely fine for the RCMP to go into people's homes to remove them because that is not allowed anymore. Or if you quote or put up some kind of Bible verse that is now going to be censored essentially by the federal government, then it would be completely fine by him as well. But I think he should eat his words. Next, Dr. Krause.
Oh, I forgot I put this in here. This was a great little clip.
More leaked footage of Elliot Page in the Odyssey, and funnily enough, she looks more like a man here than in real life, so I'm guessing this clip should make her happy.
And we showed the clip the other day. I didn't realize how short she was. My God.
She's my height. Pretty much. But I mean, it is sad that we've convinced a bunch of very mentally ill women that they can pretend to be men and then lecture men on what masculinity actually is, which is what Elliot Page has been trying to do.
I think it's less about that. It's more about they're going after the children with this ideology, and they have been for a very long time. And Canada's not backing down from this. I mean, it's ingrained into the indoctrination system, which is the school system in Canada.
And then an interesting comment from Carney himself. CCFR says, quote, "They keep guns away from me." Prime Minister Mark Carney reacts to receiving a personalized one-of-kind revolver from Turkish President Recep Erdogan. "I certainly don't have a license for it. Maybe Carney should join the 2.4 million plus Canadians who are licensed and enjoy the gift."
Yeah, President Erdogan, when everybody went over there for the G7, he gave each person a revolver along with a bunch of bullets. Carney obviously did not, supposedly took it back and gave it to the RCMP.
I was very uncomfortable by it.
My gift of maple syrup kind of undermatched the whatever it was, .357 caliber. I would like to reassure Canadians they keep guns away from me. I certainly don't have a license for it.
Yeah, and this is a bit ridiculous, especially when he's trying to make a firearm grab. He has no concept of firearms, and this is a big problem, especially when it comes to Alberta. And if we do not vote for independence and get our independence in Alberta, those firearms are going to be taken within the next five years, I would say.
I mean, him and Elliot Page are the new face of masculinity. So, gunless in every sort of way, gutless people. Okay, now let's go back to your comments and then to Alberta's Canada. Todd says, I wouldn't have been allowed to post these on YouTube anyhow without a lot of editing, like a lot. Yeah, which is why we played it on Are You a Bailey as well. But if you haven't seen it, go watch Todd's video from yesterday on our Are You a Bailey segment. Sean says, guy, that's just racist to the First Chiefs. You don't know how they can be... You don't think they can be as devious, corrupt, and incompetent as white Canadians? More even. Todd says, if you want, I'll send them to you and you can edit them till you think they'll be allowed. We can try that too. Pete says, I could clarify the Western First Nations people will give Ottawa and their so-called leaders the finger, 46% support for independence amongst the First Nations people. And that is for a reason as well. Todd says, I was thinking of sending them bits to John Bolton to edit, bits to John Ball to edit and get on YouTube, but you guys think, well, he might be interested, although I don't know. But you can send it to them and tell them that you might want to contribute that to the telethon that's coming up next Saturday. Sean says, Forever Canada has one benefactor, the Government of Canada, of course. Hard to account for that, unfortunately. Which is what Sean says. Allegedly, I will have to say, in case they get any ideas. Pete says, don't forget to thumbs up and send $25 to your favorite independence advertiser. Yes, exactly. Todd says, my next $20 donation is going to the APP. And says, might want to give them 100. And again, once again, to clarify, for people like Sean and others that are outside of Alberta, the donations are only allowed to be sent in by people residing in Alberta.
Yeah.
Not even Canada, but just Alberta. Hold on. Let me go to this one. Steve Surfaro, hello, and thank you for the $9.99 super chat saying, you guys are great. Stop the RCMP from confiscating firearms. Great message. And yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's also what we're trying to do. And guess what? By voting for independence, by voting first for the during the non-binding referendum, for a binding referendum, and or taking more extreme measures, then you're able to safeguard firearm rights within an independent Alberta.
Yeah, you can also get rid of the RCMP overnight.
Exactly.
I mean, Danielle Smith keeps talking about the Alberta sheriffs and getting rid of the RCMP, and it's just like, okay, what else are you going to do? You keep saying you're going to do all these things, and there's very, very little movement. Alberta independence changes all of that overnight.
Essentially, yep. Hold on. Steve Surfaro, thank you so much for joining our memberships and supporting us monthly. There we go. I got tongue-tied there at the end. Sean says, elbows up because Ottawa hates the USA more than free speech, self-security, hunting, hiking, owning land without clouds on, title by First Nations, affordable housing, jobs, equal protection, etc. Yes. I can't believe I read that, though. That one that fast. Pete says, I want every one of them to have money they need, meaning the third-party advertisers saying we're up against unlimited funds on the other side.
Yeah, and we're going to be part of the telethon on the 18th. So that's coming up. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. It should be a big day for the major 6 third-party advertisers, hopefully.
Yes. Next Saturday, July 18th, we'll bring up the poster again tomorrow, I believe.
And again, we cannot believe the line of propaganda that the Federalists are giving, that we are out raising them, because they are not claiming the amount of money they're raising. And we see an example of this with Forever Canada. And even when it's reported over and over and over again, they seem to not being willing to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Sean says Luxury believes, how old is this video, from 2010? Thereabouts, because he was talking about the Winter Olympics, right, in Vancouver? Yeah, so about 2010. Oh, how things have changed, and yet not changed at all. Chris Gallagher says, Carney is pathetic, pathological, lying fool. Yes, no lies there. Pete says the guy claims to be Albertan, but totally rejects firearms. That don't add up, buckwheat.
Yeah.
Another point, exactly. Okay, now let's actually go to Alberta's Canada. And we call it that way because
here's the thing. Like, you say, oh, I didn't have the gun, I gave it to the RCMP. He's surrounded by people with firearms every time he goes into Alberta or anywhere in the world. So he might not be a supporter of firearms, but everybody around him has one because he needs to be protected.
And that too, exactly. Similar to every single other politician that is against firearms, that their bodyguards should not know and should not own any or carry any firearms or use any firearms in protecting them. So hand-to-hand combat or sticks is all you can use. Okay, now let's go to Alberta's Canada. We call it that way because Alberta is the only thing that is still holding up Canada.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
That one's the longest one. Okay, let's start with, and again, I messed these up, but Mackenzie Gray says, quote, a $1 billion deal was at the core of Mark Carney's Saudi Arabia trip, a decision he defended while taking aim, I guess, at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's strategy, saying, or PMJT, saying lecturing countries from afar is an ineffective strategy. Saudi, the latest triad diversification from the USA, a country he didn't want to talk about. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It was a visit 26 years in the making. Mark Carney, the first prime minister since Jean Chrétien to come to Saudi Arabia, the latest stop on his diversification tour. Carney signing 13 agreements on things like mining, AI, and energy, worth $1 billion, a less lucrative deal compared to what he struck in China, India, and the UAE. And while new business was the core focus, Carney also attempting to distance himself from the Trudeau government, whose objections over the arrest of women's rights activists in Saudi spiraled into ambassadors being booted.
And we're going to continue to play this, and it's very interesting the conclusion they come to at the end of this clip. And this is the mainstream media, by the way. And it seems like they were trying to sell this trip all the way through. But the truth of the matter is he's not going to be able to diversify away from the United States. $1 billion is literally crumbs when it comes to natural resource or investment from foreign countries. That's like 4 days worth of what the U.S. MCA brings in.
And trade stalling.
I do see that lecturing countries from afar is an ineffective strategy. It's satisfying, but it's ineffective.
Well, it might be ineffective to Carney. It wasn't for the foreign affairs minister with her counterpart.
In my meetings, I always raise human rights, consular cases, and the need for respect for international law. And that is true today.
Carney wouldn't say if he raised human rights with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who numerous NGOs say runs a highly centralized police state where women are legally unable to get married without the permission of a male family member. The Saudi military has also been credibly accused of using their equipment to quell domestic protests, but that's not stopping Canada from opening a new defense trade office in Riyadh, all part of Carney's strategy.
Engagement can be effective. It doesn't mean it's always effective. It doesn't mean it's decisive, but it can be effective. We care deeply about human rights.
The Prime Minister was chatty at today's 30-minute press conference, except when I asked about a recent phone call between him and Donald Trump and their interactions at the NATO summit. So do you think you've made any progress with the President when it comes to trade?
I'll keep you posted.
The U.S. ambassador has said that there are two issues the Americans have: control of the bridge and tolls. They want more money sooner. Are you willing to renegotiate the current agreement to make sure the bridge opens?
I think we're willing to clarify aspects of the current arrangements.
That's an unusual.
And we'll keep going with this, but I'll say, what he got, $1 billion investments from Saudi Arabia, which is actually very little compared to what he was supposed to get. It's divided amongst 13 contracts, so that's very little into each natural resource contract. But what did he just give away to Ukraine the other day? $900 million. That's basically $1 billion. He gave away what he went and collected from Saudi Arabia. They might as well just had Saudi Arabia give it to Ukraine.
Creative accounting.
Hurt Mark Carney, and a lack of response on trade talks and the Gordie Howe Bridge opening seems like a sign that things with the U.S. might not be going very well. As you saw in my story, the Prime Minister did talk a lot about the Saudis, despite the fact that Canada only does $4.5 billion in trade annually, the equivalent to less than 2 days of Canada-U.S. trade. A stat that shows that while Carney may want to diversify trade away from the U.S., it would likely take decades to meaningfully pivot. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
And I don't think he can meaningfully pivot. I think the idea here is to pivot into communism and have the government take control of these industries ultimately.
Mm-hmm. And hold on.
And we can go into the next story if you want.
Well, I'm trying to go to the next comment, but I'm trying to figure something out first.
Do we have one more story here?
Yes, we have two more.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pete, for the $2 super chat saying Cowtowns in Alberta, right? Stampede Buzz.
Fantastic.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Because it's a question.
Yeah.
Is it? Yes.
What?
I think it's a nickname for Calgary, I believe. Okay. Now let's move on to... Thank you so much for the super chat, though. We have 3 more stories on this section. Hold on. Table Salt says, President of the Canadian Auto Manufacturers Association confirms that the Canadian auto industry is totally cooked if tariffs stick around.
Yeah, and it's not just the Canadian auto manufacturing that is cooked. It's all industries in Canada. They're going to be cooked, even with a year-on-year review. Even if they maintain the USMCA, there is no security anymore. You're going to slowly start to see Canadian companies move to the US. And this is going to give them time. This is basically going to a year-on-year review, gives confidence to the Canadians and gives security to the American industry. So you're going to see these industries kind of empty out across the border.
Canadian auto ecosystem survive a future with 25% tariffs while importing Chinese government subsidized EVs?
No, if the status quo maintains with no agreement with the U.S., persistent tariffs, as well as China gaining increasing access to the market, the manufacturing sector in its current size will be very difficult to maintain.
Canadian auto ecosystem.
Yeah, and because obviously if Alberta does get its independence, big manufacturing sectors are going to pop up in Alberta because all the natural resources are there, whether it's the mining materials or the oil and natural gas. So it's going to be cheaper to manufacture where the inputs are. So all that manufacturing that's in Ottawa and a lot of it that is in the US will start to pop up in Alberta. We really need to think how we want to develop these industries, not just going into a car manufacturing industry, but creating a car manufacturing plant that can pivot to different kind of manufacturing. So it's not just stamping out parts and things like that, but so it can make heavy equipment. So it can pivot to making military equipment and things like that if it needs to as well. That's what they're doing in the United States with a lot of their manufacturing now. They're making sure it can pivot and make different things if it needs to.
Next, Mark Nixon says, quote, unbelievable, Mark Carney delivers the technical recession, and the worst economic crash for a debut prime minister in 63 years. Real GDP is actively shrinking, and the polls say 60% of people are happy with it. Canada is a messed up country.
Yeah, and conservatives are leaving in mass. I mean, we've left. We showed the numbers: 241,000 people last year. A large portion of that was conservatives. His numbers going up because the people that would vote against him are leaving, and mass immigration is coming in on top of that and being indoctrinated by the mainstream media. This is how you get poll numbers going up when you're freaking destroying a country, and this is how a country votes in communism.
Mm-hmm. And exactly, as you say, a lot of people might wonder, well, why does he have such high poll numbers if everything clearly is not working out well? Because the people that would be against it also no longer have any confidence in the, for example, Conservative Party and are just leaving and finding better options instead of waiting for Canada to fully sink.
Well, and that's the thing, and I bring it up a lot, but there's a critical mass of people within Alberta. We have to make sure we get to that binding referendum in quick fashion after this non-binding referendum before we lose those people.
Exactly. And now let's go to Nico Lagan, who says they offered him $50,000 to apologize. He told them to stick it, and then the fine went up to $750,000. Offered him a way out to apologize, take a training course, as they did with Jordan B. Peterson, and etc. But
yeah, it's good that he did not back down here, and they offered him a crazy amount of things here as well. They wanted him to not run as a politician again.
When I refused to give in, went from $50,000 to $750,000. My insurance lawyers came to me and said, Barry, the TOEIC teachers want to settle out of tribunal. I said, well, what do they want? Well, they want you to give a public apology, that you're sorry that you hurt all these people's feelings. 2, they want you to take a training course so you understand what transgender is all about. 3, they want you to promise to never run for public office again. 4, they want you to donate $50,000 to an LGBTQ charity. But they said, don't worry about the $50,000. Your insurance will cover that. I said, well, I'll think about it. The biggest injustice of this whole kangaroo court is they will not tell me whose feelings I have hurt. And without knowing whose feelings I have hurt, there is no way that I can apologize. Secondly, I had studied this intensely, and no training program would ever convince me that gender-affirming care is good for kids. Thirdly, they're school teachers. They don't have a right to tell me I can't run for public office. And finally, even if the $50,000 was covered by insurance and it wasn't my money, I did not want any money going to an organization that was going to convince kids they ruin their bodies. So I basically told them to stick it.
And fantastic. He really stood on principles there, and that's what we need to do. And crowdfunding any fines that come in for him would be the way to go here, I think, because we do need to start standing on our principles here. Otherwise, we set precedents if we give in.
And again, we already have seen those precedents. We have Jordan Peterson, of course, when he got fined and essentially paraded down the exact same way, and going to telling him to go take classes, etc. But also Lindsay Shepherd and a bunch of different people who we don't hear about as much or didn't hear about as much at the time, or as publicized as Jordan Peterson. But this has continuously happened for a long time now, almost a decade.
And this is why they have the big ask, $750,000, and then, oh no, only 50, but you don't have to pay that. The insurance will pay that. Just plead guilty so we can set the precedent, and that gives more and more power to these kangaroo courts.
Yes. Okay, back into your comments, and then we'll go into Alberta and the world. And then we'll head over to our UMBLE. Sean says, I bet Carney could turn around the economy by giving Trump what he wants, and that most Canadians, that have pride have no interest in. That is complete control of the Arctic. Complete control of the Arctic. There we go.
It's obvious how to turn around the Canadian economy, and it can be done inside of 12 months. The problem is Mark Carney does not want to do that. He wants to take control of Canadian industry, and that's why he's collapsing the economy at the same time that he's investing in the economy. Mm-hmm. And at the same time that he's keeping private investment out of Canada. He's collapsing the economy so the Canadian government can take control.
Sorry. Where were we? Pete, because I put them all. Pete says, OMG, watched the junior challenges at the Stampede and laughed my behind off. That's what kids should be doing. Yes. And again, we showed the mutton busting, and that was really cute.
Yeah, Evie Chipiak put a clip of that. It was fantastic.
Yes. Sean says, it's MMWG, 2SLGBTQQIIAA+, who are the real victims. Just having to say that whole name, an alphabet soup is basically what makes them... Let's go to me. Real Steven Jensen says, we should create incognito... Basho to Stelter, Civilian Defense Force to stop government overreach. We can reach out and touch someone. That sounds weird. I'm sure you didn't mean it that way. It just sounded weird. Okay. Pete says, you're getting better with awkward conversations.
We're always kind of awkward. You're incredibly awkward.
I'm not awkward.
Oh yeah, you're awkward.
I know how to keep rolling with it. You say, oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, when you interrupt me, I forget. Your beauty interrupts me all the time. I just lose my train of thought.
Pete says, I like my history, like I like my coffee tutu, but not at Tim Hortons.
Double.
He said tutu.
Yeah.
He wrote tutu.
Okay.
They were talking about a GUN. About a 22. Yeah. Hold on, where are we? Pete says, once we got UBI at 2,000, who's going to work for the same amount? Or even at 1,000 a month, everybody would work 20 hours a week. That's not realistic.
Yeah, well, what happens when you get the UBI and then when they map this out, everything starts to go up. So the rent prices will go up, the food prices will go up, all the input costs will go up. So you'll have to work the same amount of hours, but you'll be desperate for the UBI because you'll need that initial base every month just to make your bills and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Sorry, I was trying.
And that's why it's a trap.
Sean, thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat and says, Guy is right. Nat plays I'm a cute girl a lot. No, I don't.
Yep.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Because I don't consider myself one.
No.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
He plays the I'm dumb card and he's not.
I am dumb.
I mean,
and you tell me
that's not a card.
And you tell me every day. That's how I know I'm being honest here.
But you love to interrupt me.
Huh?
And say that I interrupt you.
You do interrupt me.
I don't. No, I have a conversation and you want it to be you, me, you, me, you, me. We don't
That's
talk
how
like...
a conversation works.
No, we don't talk
How does it work? We both go at the same time?
Like this. Yeah, we talk normal.
Okay,
we don't
let's
wait.
do that.
Okay. This is what it's like being married. Even when the cameras are off, it's as we always say, we kind of debate on everything.
Yeah.
But in jest, we never are actually angry at each other.
Let's keep going here.
Thank you, Sean, for that.
Oh.
Okay, now let's go to Alberta and the World, and then we'll head over to Are You and Bailey.
And the first article is my favorite article of the day.
Post.
Article.
Saskatchewan writer gal says, quote, Mexicans have refused to comply with the Mexican government mandate to register all phone lines, register their digital ID, and start using digital payments. The Mexican government has been forced to continue extending the deadline to register because the majority of Mexicans refuse to do so. Yes, we do.
And Canadians need to learn from this. If you push back, it is possible.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Okay.
Peaceful noncompliance, civil disobedience, a refusal to obey unjust laws. More of what we saw in Mexico. Critical report on how the population of Mexico, the people, have completely and utterly rejected and refused to comply with Mexico's digital ID laws that were passed and put in place over a year ago. So this is a huge story because it shows you where the real power is. In Mexico, the laws are on the books, right? They were going to be the first major country to enact full-scale digital ID and biometric facial scanning for identification in the country of Mexico, and they passed a law to that nature. Well, fast forward a year, the deadline was July 1st, and it came and go. It came and went. The Mexican government had to get up in a press conference and say, well, unfortunately, over 80% of the Mexican population have simply refused to comply. They're not doing it. They just basically gave the double middle finger to the Mexican government and to the law because it's unjust, it's immoral, it's illegal, and it has to go. And so this is where the power is. It is in grassroots organization around principles of freedom and liberty. And the idea here is to break out of the two-party political paradigm, stop waiting for politicians to save us, and to just simply begin to refuse to obey unjust laws. And there are a million ways that we can peacefully disobey and use non-compliance to basically take our country back from the bastards who stole it from us in Washington, D.C.
Exactly. And I mean, that goes to Canada as well. Canada is the problem with Canada is the most compliant country with laws and regulations and rules that are completely overreaching. And this is what we see with censorship and free speech. They are pushing everything at once, and there is no major pushback from the people. No. I mean, there's some, Alberta obviously knows how to do it, and maybe Saskatchewan, but the rest of Canada is a goner at this point. And the rest of Canada is going to, if Alberta does not separate, is going to build the prison for you.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's because historically our corruption here in Mexico with politicians and politics and the system has been so surface level and so blatantly obvious. And there's been enough scandals that do come out, enough journalism actually done, with some of them unfortunately having to not be with us anymore because of the kinds of journalism they've done. But because it's been so open and everybody kind of knows about it, there's not this cognitive dissonance saying, well, no, I don't want to admit that my government, those that govern me, are that corrupt. And I still remember something that you said to me a long time ago, that in Mexico, corruption is more obvious because it's done in a dumber way, quote unquote. It's way more obvious and everybody sees it. But in Canada, the corruption is so ingrained and so at a different level, like a higher level of corruption that what happens in Canada and in the US, that it becomes less noticeable to the general public and less people are willing to see it and break that cognitive dissonance, but it's at such a high level that it's easier to hide it.
Well, there's also not a monopoly on force here in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's shared power through organized crime, through the government, and through different entities. In Canada, the government has absolute monopoly on force.
Yeah. And wants to further that
and
as
propaganda
well.
As well.
Exactly. And want to further that as well, again, with the gun grab and a firearm grab and a bunch of other things. But yes, I do. And I mean, eventually we'll see what happens here in Mexico. I think eventually they will give up because people are still not going to do it, even though they extended the deadlines. But I think, again, that's why I noticed it so quickly within Canada as the COVID and the Jibby Jab era was coming. And I was like, no, we're not going to do this because I have that healthy distrust of governments in general because it was bred into me as I was growing up in Mexico. And I would see people around me in Canada not have that. And I would start to ask, well, why not? Why do you trust the government so much?
Yeah, it's different in each country. Mexicans have a general distrust of the government. The Americans have an inbred sense of innate freedom, and that's what makes them not comply. Canada doesn't have any of that. They just go right along with it. And that's why we've seen such a high percentage of people that got the jibby jab and just comply with unjust laws.
And again, because of the cognitive dissonance, defended those decisions, therefore defended the government even more. Pete, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Says, Nat is right guy plays the I am cute guy a lot. Yes, he does. Thank you. But thank you for the super chat, Pete.
Yeah, with my broken nose and my busted up teeth.
Well, that makes you rugged.
Okay, let's go into the next story here.
I guess. I mean, I like you for some reason.
Less and less every day.
No, more and more every day. Peter St. Ong says, quote, regime change at the Federal Reserve as Kevin Warsh hauls the Powell legacy to the dumpster. Sadly, it's rearranging the silverware when Warsh could functionally end the Fed.
Yeah, and there is a war on banking going on between the Trump administration and the global banks, and just a lot of different mechanisms when it comes to banking and digital currency and other things.
And we used to talk about it a lot more before, too.
It's regime change at the Fed as Kevin Warsh carts off the Jerome Powell legacy to the dumpster. Is it enough to save the Fed, or is it time to dumpster the entire creature from Jekyll Island? Last week, freshly minted Fed Chair Kevin Warsh held his first big FOMC meeting, launching multiple salvos that changes coming to the Federal Reserve. On interest rates, it was pretty much what everybody expected, holding rates steady at basically neutral. Fed members' rate expectations crawled up, which is not surprising given inflation took off on oil prices, but the Fed's not panicking into hikes, which is good. But the big news was Warsh announcing 5 changes to how the Fed operates, as my based colleague E.J. Antoni puts it. Warsh wants to dismantle the Fed bureaucracy to reorient it to the job it is supposed to do, fight inflation. So first, Warsh slashed the so-called policy statement the Fed puts out to manipulate markets every meeting, replaced with a repeated promise of, quote, price stability, wants to improve the data the Fed uses, which is long overdue since the Fed has step-by-step painted itself into inflation data nobody believes. A YouGov poll last year found over half of Americans with an opinion do not trust government inflation numbers. Warsh wants to slash the mission creep that took the Fed from inflation fighter to economic manipulator to, under Jerome Powell, climate change and DEI, fiddling with systemic racism while inflation burned at double digits. Finally, Warsh announced a review of the $7 trillion Fed balance sheet, which is the accumulated assets, mostly federal debt, the Fed has bought with freshly printed dollars since the 2008 crisis, especially since COVID. That's where it basically types numbers into Excel sheets in the basement, announces they are dollars, and buys everything in sight, which prints new money. Now, this printing was the main reason for Bidenflation, and Warsh has argued for years to pawn it, cancel the dollars, which lowers inflation, and use that to let rates go down.
And basically there is a total reform going on of the Fed right now, and this is just step one. He's going to do this multiple times, I believe. And this is going to... He's already broken free from the London banking system. There was a lot of mechanisms. London got to set a lot of different rates and things of that nature to keep control over the American government after World War II. And Trump began that process in his first term, and a lot of that got enacted in his second term.
And lastly, kind of connected, I guess, Lord Bevo says, quote, the EU trick explained, because...
And the video here is nothing, so it's just showing all the politicians that are corrupt. So let's actually read this nice and slow because it's fairly important.
Okay, because chat control was a proposal from the European Council, 360 votes were required to cancel it. 360 votes represent a majority of all members of the European Parliament, not just those present. The trick was to schedule the vote on the final voting day before the summer recess, when many MEPs or members of the European Parliament are already absent or on vacation. In that way, there are not enough votes to cancel the law. Hence, today's vote to cancel chat control only received 314 out of the 360 votes needed. In such a flipped cancellation vote, every absentee effectively counts as a vote for the bad law. The Ursula and co. using the EU's long vacation policy to trick the parliament and push through surveillance is peak EU.
Yeah, and this got voted down twice. This is bringing in and ushering in the surveillance state. Not even the politicians that are corrupt in the EU would vote for this. So they had to rig the vote, and they keep doing things like this. And this is why you don't want an unelected bureaucracy ruling over you. You already have a corrupt government ruling over you. You put a corrupt bureaucracy on top of that, and then the UN, and then the NATO on top of that. You've built your own prison there.
Essentially. Okay, now let's go back to your comments, and then we'll head over to RUMBLE. Steven Jensen says, not you guys, us on sensitive topics. Not sure what that one was for, but Pete says UBI, Universal Brain Dead Incentive.
Yeah.
Essentially what it is. Sean says, where's the American girl who got unalived by her migrant boyfriend in Ireland story? We kind of talked about it yesterday. Do you want to talk? Are we talking about it on Rumble?
Well, I didn't want to talk about it on YouTube. And I think I forgot to grab it for RUMBLE, actually.
Right. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We
might. Well, maybe we'll grab it between, we'll talk about it on RUMBLE tonight.
Yeah. Sean says, it's easier in Mexico for obvious reasons. We do rely on politicians and their need to be reelected to stop government overreach. Problem is that rigged elections, expensive bureaucracy make it hard. And the system itself has created and lied to the people enough where it becomes harder to break that cognitive dissonance between the politicians and the citizens.
Yeah, I mean, governments we're in the age where governments want total control, and that's just the fact. I'm not I'm not a huge fan of organized crime, but organized crime wants a certain level of freedom through chaos because they need that freedom. They do not want a digital ID. They do not want a digital currency. So even if the government adopts it, they're going to make sure it's non-functional and it doesn't really work, just so the government can say to international bodies, yeah, we have a digital ID, we have a digital currency. Nobody uses it and it doesn't work. Why? Because it's a shared power base between organized crime. And even though I don't like organized crime, there are a few benefits.
Sean says the European Union is not democratic. Well, no, obviously not. Okay, let's go back to the other comments. Pete, oh, I can't read that one, sorry. It's because they're talking about firearms and I can't talk about that too much on YouTube. Silver Pete, hello, says hi. Just hi. Cindy Melnick says, love Nico Lagan, the political orphans. People need to look him up. Very informative channel. Yes, and we do actually also have an interview with Nico Lagan here on the channel, on the podcast section.
Yeah, and if you're only going to go watch one of his pieces of content, every 2 weeks, he has a show he does, East Meets West, with Jason Levine from Alberta. They talk about a lot of Quebec independence and Alberta independence and how we can work together. It's absolutely fantastic little show.
Harmony says, I must go and water my garden. Please be careful out there. Says, love the both of you. And same here, says, I love young people who I can learn from and then also give my wisdom to as well. And thank you so much for that wisdom.
One young person, one older person.
I am. Pete says, no, you want the last word here. He does. And Pete says, got your back, bro. She's a fine lady. I hope you mean me.
You are a fine lady.
And Pete says she's got really good takes. See? You should let me talk. And Pete Griswold then asks Pete after he said that you used the cute guy card, cauliflower ears. Jiu-jitsu is still hot. You don't have. Luckily enough, you never got those. Yeah, it's genetic.
A lot of it's genetic, actually. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that. So it's not just from rubbing your ears on the mat. A lot of, yeah.
Ew. Okay, where are we? Pete says, I also wish I could be right on crypto all the time, but that's another story. I have opinions about crypto, but Rage Against Machine, hello, says, we swear by earth beneath, foot and sky, and breath to hold fast what was won, to guard what was given, to yield not our people, to rot or ruin. Yes. Okay, now let's head over to RUMBLE. Please follow us there. You can find our channel name down here. It's the same as this one. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll see you there. Before you go, though, please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out. Thank you to everybody that sent super chats or became members, and everybody else for being here and letting us know what you're thinking. We'll see you in about 30 seconds.
Adios.
Let's get ready.